Sevhead Creative at sevhead.com presents the audio web series Epyphany, Born from the Sea, written and produced by Don Sev Severance, and narrated by Professor Proteus. Episode 6, Chapter 12, Dolphin Rescue. Without hesitation, the tribe fell in behind Epyphany as she led them toward the source of the signal. Moments later, 2 more explosions churned the ocean, and this time the entire group felt the sonic pressure. Distress signals flooded their senses, a chaotic mix of clicks, whistles, and agitated vocalizations grew louder as they closed in. Flying ahead, Reefer reported back. 3 big ships. Never seen anything like them. They're forming a triangle. Must be miles apart. But they're closing in. Epyphany surged forward, Irie at her side, Storm close behind. She instructed Dali to hang back, then sent a thought bundle to Reefer and the tribe. We need to focus this bundle on Bliss. When I hit the transmission note, concentrate and project with me. I hope Bliss will know what to do. Epyphany began to sing a strange scale, a sound so low it resonated in their bones, ascending quickly to a pitch no human could hear. When she reached the highest note, she held it until she felt the tribe in sync. Then they all let go of the thought. The shock was powerful, an electric connection between themselves, Bliss, and the gold tower. Normally, they would not be in motion during this process to allow for recovery, but Epyphany knew there was no time to spare. Something horrific was about to happen, and she had to stop it. Checking in with everyone, she asked, "Still with me? Still moving?" Slowly, they all responded, accounted for and in motion. As they neared the scene, Reefer's voice echoed in her mind. "Epyphany, this is hard to describe. The explosions killed some. There's blood in the water, and carcasses floating on the perimeter. Inside the triangle, dozens of pods are converging. The water's churning with confused dolphins. The ships are turning, starting to circle. They're dropping nets. There must be over 1,000 dolphins out there. What do we do?" Epyphany pushed harder, finally spotting the massive ships. When she and Bliss had plotted their course, there was no record of activity in this area. How could such large-scale slaughter be happening here? She prayed Bliss received her message. She directed Irie and Zip to monitor the perimeter, while Dali, Magnum, and Speed positioned themselves between 2 ships, ready to act on her signal. With Reefer scouting above, Epyphany and Storm approached the nearest vessel. The nets were nearly connected. Without hesitation, she assigned Storm the most dangerous task. Dive and approach the rear of the ship, close to the propeller. On her signal, he would strike the hull hard enough to create serious turbulence. Meanwhile, Epyphany would attempt something she'd never mastered before, the mind cloud technique Bliss had been teaching her. If she could confuse the captain, maybe he'd overcompensate and lose control of the ship. As Zip and Irie reported that the dolphins were nearly trapped, panic rising, Epyphany felt a jolt of hope. Reefer's voice screamed in her mind. "Bliss came through! The ships are turning away from the dolphins!" Instantly, she signaled Storm and focused all her energy on the captain. He didn't know what hit him. His ship veered wildly, then began to rock violently. Bewildered, he watched his hand gun the throttle, nearly capsizing the vessel. Several men were thrown into the bloody water. The net tore free and drifted away. Magnum and Speed tore another hole in the net, creating an escape route. Dali used every ounce of his mental strength to calm the pod and guide them toward the opening. At all 3 corners of the killing triangle, the ships turned and ripped the net apart. The dolphins scattered, searching for their podmates. Epyphany sighed with relief as Storm rejoined them, safe. Before she could worry further, the rest of the tribe gathered around her, exhausted but triumphant. As she watched the distant ship regain control, her eyes caught sight of the large, bright red logo, an image and words she would come to fear and hate. Pisces Corp, we feed the world. Chapter 13. Two Masters. Thoreau left the meeting with a strange feeling of apprehension. Despite Saja's attempts to mask her emotions, he had noticed the subtle shifts in her demeanor during the video. At one point, she stifled a small gasp, blinking away a tear. His intention wasn't to shock, but to expose the rampant cruelty inflicted on various species. This wasn't just about preserving the beauty of the ocean's flora and fauna. It was about protecting the foundation of the entire food chain. Without it, humanity would struggle to sustain its growing population. Though Saja had been polite, showing a token warmth and understanding, Thoreau felt he hadn't made much progress. He knew she had worked hard to gain credibility and power in the company, and one meeting wasn't going to change the world overnight. Still, he had hoped to spark at least a glimmer of empathy. As Saja gazed out at the muted grey clouds blanketing the Seattle skyline, images from Thoreau's video haunted her. She had always maintained a peripheral awareness of Pisces Corp's activities, but she had consciously avoided confronting the grim realities behind her wealth. Now, the sounds from the video replayed in her mind, laughing men herding and slaughtering, hatchets hacking flesh, screeching dolphins, whales tangled in nets, slowly drowning. She couldn't shake the images of stranded penguins, starving polar bears, and pristine coral reefs being shredded by dragnets. Garbage-laden cruise ships, islands of plastic choking seabirds, and homeless villagers evacuating their flooded homes tormented her thoughts. For the first time in years, Saja wept openly. Her sorrow quickly turned to anger. How could he do that to me? What does he expect me to do about it? It's tragic, but it's not my fault. Sure, Pisces might be a little short-sighted, but the world needs food. People have to eat. Does he want us to stop production and let millions starve? Then she softened. He does have a point, and his heart is in the right place, but it's all so complex. Where do we start? She pondered the challenge of serving her two masters. The first was power, a drive her father had instilled in her. He had built his empire from nothing, and she had grown up hearing tales of his ruthlessness. Yet, he had always been encouraging and kind to her. While the family name and wealth opened doors, he made it clear she had to earn her place. For Saja, power and wealth were measures of her worth, and success brought her father's approval, the closest substitute for his love. Without them, she feared she was nothing but a hollow shell of a woman. She had spent her life trying to live up to her father's image of her, defining herself by it. Her other master was lust. From her middle teens, she had embraced her sensuality and sexuality, finding in them a surrogate for love. Unlike love, she could control the circumstances. It gave her mind and soul a respite from the pressures of her corporate responsibilities. At its best, it allowed her to be soft, loving, and vulnerable. In the world of sex, she felt safe and free. She could share power or let go of it entirely. She could give or receive pleasure without reservations, escaping the demands of her life. Thoreau had become a key element in her plans to further her wealth and power. Yet he was also the only person who brought her genuine contentment. His touch transported her to a place she had only imagined. It was so pure. Since his return, he seemed incapable of lies, his sincerity creating a near spiritual connection. Their relationship felt like the closest she would ever get to real love. Saja feared she might have to choose between Pisces and Thoreau, but she resolved to have both. That night, as they ate a quiet dinner together, neither mentioned the meeting. They both tried to act as if the day's events had no bearing on their personal relationship. Yet, beneath the surface, they couldn't ignore the sense of distrust. A crack had formed in the smooth veneer of their romance. Chapter 14. A Declaration. Upon returning from the battle, the tribe swam directly to the cavern temple, where Bliss awaited them. As they entered the tunnel, she could sense their confusion and the sorrowful images of their brief yet intense struggle. The tribe gathered at the foot of the gold tower, and Bliss waited for their minds to quiet. Then she spoke. "We have entered a new era. What you witnessed, and thankfully prevented, is only a small part of an unprecedented escalation in the slaughter of dolphins and sea mammals. The human population of our planet has grown so vast that they resort to extreme and thoughtless measures to feed themselves, often at the expense of other species. In recent decades, the so-called civilized world has systematically depleted resources and polluted the environment, making it nearly impossible to sustain their way of life. Instead of re-examining their methods, the leaders choose to ignore the facts and continue down a path to extinction. They have forgotten that this planet belongs to all creatures, and without balance, every system will eventually collapse. We, along with countless innocent creatures, are victims of this human disregard. It may already be too late, but your brave actions prove that we don't have to stand by as our oceans and brethren are ravaged. Not all humans are blind to this madness, but those who care enough to act are few. Most are lulled into a false sense of security, expecting a life of comfort and consumption that far exceeds what the earth can sustainably provide. We have lived simply, joyfully, and in harmony with the natural systems that support us. Our wealth lies in the healthy environment that supplies our needs. Earth was designed to sustain all its inhabitants. But humans have altered that design to fit their selfish desires, endangering it for the rest of us. We must slow them down. We must show them a different path. We are entering the first chapter of the transition, and though I don't know how it ends, I am certain we are an integral part of it. The tablets tell a story, a prophecy I have been unraveling for many years. Some predictions have already come to pass. We are part of that prophecy, and we have reached a pivotal point. Until recently, it was nearly impossible to send a clear message to humans without endangering our lives and our mission. But now, the survival of Earth and all its creatures may rest on the genius, bravery, and choices of one man, our link to the modern world. He's a champion of reason and innovation, a seeker of truth, and our friend. Thoreau. Epyphany flinched at the mention of Thoreau. She hadn't thought of him throughout the journey and the events that followed. In that moment, memories of him came rushing back. What had become of him? Where was he living? Did he remember anything? Not long after Epyphany had emerged from her deep depression, she and Bliss had a difficult but enlightening conversation. Bliss had eventually convinced Epyphany that Thoreau's departure was in everyone's best interest, explaining the subtleties of the mind cloud. There was no way to know if he could reconcile subconscious memories of Ujjayi with the reality of modern life. But it was up to him to find his way. One crucial detail Bliss omitted was the vital role Epyphany would play in their battle. Bliss needed Epyphany to act on instinct and didn't want to cloud her judgment with any preconceived notions of responsibility. Epyphany and Thoreau shared a strong bond. But the question remained. Would they have the desire and strength to survive the trials ahead? Bliss's words deeply affected Epyphany and the tribe. They felt the undeniable truth and profound sadness in her message. How could one man make such a difference? Where would they begin? They couldn't have known that Bliss had seen this coming for a long time, and that recent events had allowed her to set her plan in motion. Bliss couldn't foresee the exact future. It came to her in riddles like pieces of a puzzle, offering a roadmap with alternate routes and detours. She could only make informed guesses and intuitive decisions as they navigated the uncertain path ahead. We thank you for listening to another installment of this series. There are many more chapters to come, so we hope you subscribe and hit the bell so you can continue to join Epyphany and her tribe as they navigate the stormy seas into the transition.